Welcome back to our podcast, Inclusive Leadership, It's Not Black or White. I'm Anna Poole, Executive Coach, here with my colleague, psychotherapist and teacher, Bede Draper. In our last session, we talked about the many practical ways in which inclusive leadership fosters what organizations need most, such as the desire to cooperate, the feeling of being connected to a community at work, and the creation of a more engaged culture. Bede went on to say that one of the most important jobs of leaders is to consistently model, teach, and show what it means to be inclusive. This leads to the creation of an inclusive culture, something worth its weight in gold, because when people feel treated humanely, fairly, and respectfully, they invest their time and energy in their jobs much more fully. Communication flows more effectively, creativity and innovation flourish, and the best talent stays because it's so much more rewarding to be part of an inclusive culture. But look, this is not new information. You can't pull up the Harvard Business Review or the McKinsey Quarterly without having research verifying findings like these just jump off the page at you. So it begs the question, if we, leaders, already know the benefits of inclusivity, not only on people, but also on the bottom line of the company, why aren't more leaders taking a clear stand on this and actually making it happen? I really don't get it. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Bede. Why aren't more leaders moved to adapt and model inclusive leadership behaviors and instead seem determined to stick with status quo in terms of interacting in an excluding and non-inclusive manner?
Well, it's very easy to verbally say that of course, I believe in inclusive leadership. It's very easy to say. It's even to have thoughts about that. The problem is, if I'm not actually moved to having a leadership style that's inclusive, if I'm not actually emotionally moved to relate to people in an inclusive way, I won't, no matter what theories that I have. And the thing is that, and the reason I'm not really moved to relate in an inclusive way is that I have another agenda. I'm moved in another direction. Now, when we look at this practically, if I understand the full value of people working together happily and harmoniously in order to produce a value that can be exchanged for money, if I really understand that and see the value of it, I am moved towards it. Now, the problem is, I'm moved by something else. And generally, the problem is I get moved by human vanity. Because you see, a position of power, a position of status, egoically is extremely delicious and satisfying. Okay, it may not be useful, but in terms of arrogance, in terms of having power over people, it's a delicious feeling. So what happens is I use my position and role basically to maintain a certain stature concerning myself, which comes out as arrogance. Oh, I might be friendly. I might have the friendly face. But basically, with my subordinates, because I'm talking to them from a one-up, one-down position, first of all, I'm going to be eliciting infantile reactions of fear and all that stuff. And this is the problem. So what happens is, when people fear me, and they always fear authority, because authority will punish them if they disobey. So there's a whole lot of hidden rules. So in a board meeting, for example, a subordinate wouldn't dare disapprove of someone with such stature. And the thing is, because my real agenda is the confirming of myself with a certain position. And I find it good. And I expect and in fact, I demand others to obey me. And the problem with this is that there can't be a free flow of information. Now, it's true, as a leader, for example, I supervise a whole group of people. Now, supervise in Latin means super, above, vise, to see, vise. So I'm looking at things from above. That's a very important function. But when I take that function and turn it into a psychological satisfaction of arrogance, what happens is I'm oozing with it. And what happens is people will have to adapt to my arrogance. They won't tell me what they really think. They won't overtly say no, but they will by passive resistance. I'm actually literally creating passive resistance. So I'll have various forms. People will react to me and respond to me as a leader by not getting things done on time, frustrating my efforts to get things done. But what they're doing is that I don't see that their reactions to me are because of what I am like. Whereas if I'm an actual inclusive leader, in other words, I actually look at my staff with friendly eyes, which I can't when I'm being arrogant. If I'm aware of my position and my power and my status, I'm not going to be kind. I'm not going to be friendly, actually, even though I have a friendly facade, because behind that friendly facade, what is moving me is plain old arrogance.
Wow, Bede. Now you're talking my language. I experience this every day in my work as an executive coach. I really do. Working with an arrogant presentation of someone's personality. And what you're saying rings so true to me. I've got to think our listeners are recognizing this as well. So keep going. This is really engaging.
So what happens is you've got a situation where I'm not really on point. I'm not really on purpose. An inclusive leader who's on purpose basically has a manner that includes. And this is quite obvious because, you see, if people are freely communicating to me about their concerns or they have a difference of opinion about how something should be done, this is mirroring back to me the fact that I'm being inclusive. Because, and like what you were saying at the beginning, Anna, we want a free flow of information, of creativity. But if everyone knows that they have to conform to the pattern, to the hidden rules, don't upset the boss, do what he wants, suck up to him. Do you know what I mean? Because if I suck up to him, my job is safe. That really puts the brakes on. But what it does is that it doesn't know that there's no meeting of minds in terms of creativity. It can't happen. So the manner in which I lead, if it's not friendly and inclusive, sure, I'll get people to obey. I'll get people to conform to my arrogance, to my sense of myself. They'll treat me with the proper respect that's due to me. But it also means that they're not going to talk openly. They're not going to really communicate. So what happens is, because there's no real open communication, I don't really know what's going on. And I'm the problem. Whereas once I start to adopt an inclusive manner of leading, sure, I'm going to have people who will disagree with me and will say that they disagree with me. Well, that's all right. It means that I can't play God anymore, but basically there's a possibility of new things arising.
Wow. So Bede, in order for someone to be an inclusive leader, the light you're shedding on this is telling me that it has to be more important to me to be inclusive than it does to be, for example, perceived as powerful or perceived as the all-knowing, smartest guy in the room, for example.
That's the whole thing. I have a fundamental choice of values. Now, because the desire for power is so predominant in human beings, which we will go into next time about the dark side of life, we can have that impulse and we can recognize that desire to be arrogant and to look good and to have power over others. But we don't need it to determine how I have my leadership manner. So I've got this fundamental choice. I can either pursue a manner of leadership that enables me to form strong cooperative bonds with my subordinates, so that there's a free flowing of information, so that there's no people being excluded, but they're included. And so I have that, I've got the choice to go down that road, or I have got the choice to maintain my power and status. It's fundamental. And basically, unless we as leaders actually see the value, and that values must become valuable to us. Your first question, we won't be moved to change our leadership style. Well, sure, we'll give all of the talk. Oh, yes, yeah, I agree with inclusiveness. You get into trouble if you don't believe in inclusiveness these days. But you're not going to be inclusive.
Wow. So let me just paraphrase back. So as human beings, we have this fundamental choice that we can choose to be inclusive, or we can choose to be, exclusive and arrogant and foster our own power and superiority. And we've got to become, so here's a question for you. How do I become sensitive to that choice? Because I would guess for most of it's a bit unconscious, Bede.
Well, the thing is, as we will go on next time, perception or cognition depends on context. So when I actually have a desire to be inclusive, I will then see when I'm not being inclusive. I will also see I will see when people are excluding. So unless I have this desire to be inclusive, I will not, my range of cognition in terms of excluding behavior, I won't see. And I won't care about it either, by the way.
That's brilliant. So, okay, we have to wrap it up here, but let me just say to our listeners, if you really care, if you're really moved by being inclusive, then what's going to show up is the times when you're not being inclusive. And that is a good thing, right, Bede? Like, you have to see it in order to change it.
Like what Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. So we need to examine our values. We need to examine our conduct. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let's leave it there. Thank you, Bede. We'll pick this up next time.
Thanks, Anna.